Hey listeners, Jenny here, and I have an invitation for you. Here is an opportunity to learn from somebody who fumbled their way into a full recovery from debilitating chronic illness, so I can show you exactly what it takes to get yourself into recovery without the fumbling mistakes that I took so long to learn from. If you're suffering with a chronic illness or hitting burnout, I know you want to feel energized, pain-free, and safe and trusting of your body. But if you keep fighting and pushing your body, overriding its signals, without learning how to be self-compassionate, to prioritize and listen to your body's needs, so you have lifelong and sustainable change, then you're not only going to stay sick, but you're likely going to get sicker and struggle more. There is another way. In this free workshop, 10 Steps to More Energy Without the Flare-Ups, I'm going to show you a radically different approach to your recovery, so that you can get your energy back and stay well for good. What would you do with your energy back? What would your life look like? All you need to do is save the date right now, 16th of September, and then head over to jennyadamscoach.co.uk/energy and join the priority list. Once you do that, there will be a bunch of support, bonuses, and case studies to help you along your way between now and September. Once again, that's jennyadamscoach.co.uk/energy. I'll see you there. Joining me today is Mike Watts. I met him through him and his wife's program, Relaxed Money. So his wife is Kate Northrup, and they help women create a better relationship with money, sex, and power. They link a lot of money and the nervous system together. And I've been in this program for just over a year, and this is what took me to Miami a few months ago. Been an incredible program. Mike's been on his own journey of chronic illness with a chronic skin condition. So today is going to be a really interesting conversation. We talk about what it is to ask for support. We talk all about money and energy and how to manage them. We also talk about parenting and lots on men's healing. So listen up, and I hope you enjoy today. Thank you for tuning in to the Calm Your Nervous System podcast, where you will learn to regulate your nervous system, not just calm it. I'm your host, Jenny Adams, and I'm a somatic coach who has recovered from debilitating ME and trauma. Alongside my guest experts, I'm here to share tips, stories, and debunk jargon. What is somatics anyway? About how you can regulate your nervous system so you don't have to live with chronic illness, burnout, or debilitating trauma for the rest of your life. A joyful life is possible. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Mike. It's lovely to have you here and to share some of your story. And I think it would be, I'll talk a little bit about how we actually met. So we know each other through your wonderful wife's program called Relaxed Money. And I think we met when I came to Miami earlier in the year, which was an amazing trip. And the more I've learned about you and your experiences since we've been in this program, it's been really interesting to hear about some of the sickness and the chronic illness, chronic skin stuff, and the adversity that you've had to go through. So if you're happy to share, can you tell us a little bit about your story, especially when it comes to your health?
Sure. Yeah. It is a long one, so we could be here for 3 hours, but I know we don't have that time, but I can kind of make it a little bit simpler for everything. I ended up thank you for having me first off. So it's a pleasure to be on your podcast. I ended up having like a little bit of a skin rash issue that popped up in about 2017, 2016 timeframe. And from there, things just progressively got worse over the next year. They put me on a couple rounds of topical and oral steroids to clear things up. And then I had a massive withdrawal effect. So here in the United States, at this point, they don't honor that topical and oral steroid withdrawal is a thing, but around the world they actually do, and it's a huge problem. So what ended up happening is my skin, I'm happy to send you photos if you want to include them in your show notes. My skin kind of exploded, and just imagine a sunburn, but then it stays for months, and it's about 10 times worse than probably 20 times worse than the worst sunburn you've ever had.
Ooh.
And so that is what has happened inside of my system. And that is kind of what I ended up dealing with for a number of years, and went to a lot of dark places, and my skin just kind of felt like it was burning for a very extended period of time. I was able to get it calmed down, and then it popped back up. And that was 2018 to 2019. And then back in 2021, it popped back up. And then I proceeded to break my knee after I started feeling better. And then about a year later, I broke my kneecap. And then about a year after I broke my kneecap, I was hit by a car. And so then it shattered my tibia. Not, I guess shatter is a little extreme. I broke my tibia bone, and then I ended up needing 2 surgeries. I spent 8 days in the hospital. And so I've just been on this healing journey since 2018. So if you take the last 6 years.
Wow.
So that's the real quick version of what I've been through, and tried a variety of pretty much everything I could think of. Every doctor had a suggestion. Every holistic doctor had a suggestion. Every healing practitioner in the world was like, try this thing and you'll get better, and yada, 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 to shorten it's like, yeah, I tried it all, and then I stopped trying it all, and I started to really understand what healing is for me, and how to go about doing that with my skin, and then in terms of like my broken bones, etc.
Okay. And thank you for sharing that story. I mean, that sounds like a lot in not a very long
It was a lot.
space
That
of time.
was very like a 5-minute explanation of, a 6-year journey. So I'm happy to expand more on that.
I'd love to hear, did something in particular trigger your skin? You said one day it just kind of exploded. Was there anything that happened before that set it off?
Yeah, so I think a lot of times when we deal with health stuff, when you always hear it too, when people get cancer or they're sick, they're just like, it just came out of nowhere, right? That's a lot of me getting hit by the car came out of nowhere, right? But when it comes to autoimmune issues, it comes to our immune system, it comes to sickness or disease, most of the time it's building up over time, right? If you gain like 10 pounds, just think about weight, for example. Like you just gain 10 pounds and you realize I'm 10 pounds heavier than I was a year ago. You had a year that like something happened, right? And I know weight loss is a very sensitive topic for a lot of people, so I don't want to dive into it too much. But it's just like, just as an example. And so with me, with my skin situation, I think it was just a compound of stress over time and not knowing how to handle it. And so I would say I'd go to the gym, right? I'd work out. I get a hard workout in, which causes more stress on your system. So we'd be doing these things. I do cold plunges, or I do a sauna, or I do insert the activity that we quote unquote would be healing. And sometimes those things add more stress to the system. So if like the system is already stressed out, then all of a sudden we're just compounding that with more stress when we think we're actually benefiting our health. And that's what ended up happening, I think, for me. It was really, if I factored in, I got laid off from a job. And so if you think of the timeline, right, where this stuff takes time to build up, is I was laid off in 2009 for my first like really real corporate job out of university. And then I started my own business in 2009, 2010, finished my MBA in 2010. And then I started this journey of running my own company, which drained my savings. I cashed out a 401k plan to survive on it. I was going to take a full-time job just to like supplement why I built this side business. Then I ended up meeting Kate, who's now my wife at that time. We started traveling. Also, both of us didn't have a lot of cash, had a tremendous amount of debt. How am I going to support this, right? Starting the business, all of these things compound over. And then we had a wedding, got married, had a first kid. And so my wife and I were running a company together, and which was a lot of fun. But then we ended up having our first kid. And then when you go from not having a child to having a child, it is unbelievably a tremendous journey that you can't plan for that. Right. So then my wife had really bad postpartum depression. I felt I lost her. I felt like I lost this woman that I married. And then I realized like that life that we were living, the two of us, you add in a third child, or you add in a kid. Now I'm not there, right? I'm more on the back burner in that situation. And yeah, I think it was just a huge adjustment period for what we went through. And then we moved like 3 times in Maine, and then we ended up buying this house that was close to being finished, but we had to select things. And then Kate ended up getting pregnant again. So then it went to our second child, new house, new baby, the whole thing, moving. And I think it's just those stressful components pounded on top of each other. And I never really understood or learned how to deal with stress in a proper way, besides overexerting myself to the extreme. So one day, as an example, I wanted to go away by myself and like regroup, rebalance. This is what I thought I needed because life that was happening was overwhelming. So I was like, oh, I'll go to this lake in Maine when we lived in Maine. And I was like, this is fun. And I can go snowmobiling because I've never been snowmobiling. I'm like, this would be a fun adventure. I happened to find a guide. I went by myself, and this guide, it was just me and him. And he's like, you want to go on a long ride? And this guy's been riding snowmobiles for like 30 years. So I don't know what a long ride is. I don't know what a short ride is. I've never been there. But I know how to drive a car. And so here in the States, right, we go by miles. And so it's like 100 miles is a long time. I ended up going on a snowmobile ride with this guy for like 120 miles in a day.
Wow.
And something like this. It was so long. It was an entire day. And they were like, you made his dream come true. And then by the time, 6:00 p.m. rolled around, I was exhausted because I've never drove a frickin' snowmobile. So it's like those type of things would happen all the time where it's like, oh, let me just go get a little fun activity and reset myself. But then I take it to the extreme. I've been mountain biking or riding bikes my whole life. And so it's like, oh, now I get a mountain bike and now I'm going to become a professional mountain bike rider. Like that's where my brain goes through my body. It's like, yes, I'm an extreme professional mountain biker now, which is so crazy because, I'm really took that approach at 35 years old and that's not going to happen. Right.
I mean, I have ADHD, so I'm all for like, oh, here's a new hobby. I'm going to suddenly turn it into a profession. And this is my new thing I'm obsessed with. So I get it.
But I would say that's the biggest piece for me was like understanding. And then, of course, once I started taking prescription medications, the withdrawal effects coming off of that compounded on top of that. But to me, a lot of that compounded because my immune system was already so weak due to stress overload that this just heightened everything that happens. And then with the steroids, it just shuts your system down. So then every little thing is affecting it. And I became really weak. And so it just compounded over once again on top of each other.
So when you say that you felt like this came from a compounded stress throughout your life, did you realize that at the time, or are you only realizing that now in hindsight?
I realized it in the middle of it
Okay.
more than anything else. I have a lot more clarity on it now that I'm on the other side of all of this. But I realized, I remember, I guess you would call it your panic attack. I went for a walk in our neighborhood up in Maine and I kind of like blacked out in the middle of the walk. And then my heart started pounding really fast. Like when I listen to people describe a panic attack, that's what it seemed like to me. And I was like, what's happening? I didn't fully understand what was going on. And so because when you get really sick, what happens? You have to slow down. It's really hard to push through when your body, when I lose 40 pounds in a month and then I'm freezing and I'm wearing winter clothes everywhere in my house, I'm not able to fully participate in anything. It's like a swift kick in the butt, right? You just are forced to stop. And I did a lot of journaling during that time and just thinking about what is it, how did I end up here? And then what can I do differently that's there? So I just look at all aspects of my life. What's happening emotionally with me? What are unanswered things that I've dug into? What am I unhappy with in the world? What's happening inside of our family? What's happening inside of our business? I start to evaluate all areas of my life about where are things that are more stressful and what can I let go of? So it kind of happened in the middle of all of this. But then now as I have expanded out, it's been 6 years that I've had a lot of insight on it, done a lot of therapy around it. I've shared this story many times, right? So it's like there's a lot of processing that has taken place during it.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for sharing that. And these things that you recognised, the journaling, the evaluating what's going on in work, at home, with your family, did that come from having to be forced to slow down and stop through your illness to actually evaluate and look at these things? Or were you looking at them already?
Well, I would say both, to answer that correctly, because I've always been into constant improvement, right? I always thought it was great to just continually improve myself, to become better than who I am. I never wanted to live, like, I never wanted to be 60 years old and just hanging out. You know, it's like we're here for a short period of time on this planet in the current, physical body that we are living in. And I was like, well, why can't I just keep getting better? And so it's always been that has been driven into me since I was like a teenager. I wanted to be on the cover of Forbes magazine as one of those big successful businessmen. And that was like a dream I had since I was a teenager. And so that was the goal I was always striving to. So whatever I needed to do to get there, like I went back to school to get an MBA because my boss at Philip Morris was like, you should go get that if you want to be in executive leadership inside the company. And I was like, okay. I did not like school. Like, I liked the social aspect of school, but just going to a classroom, doing all that stuff, that wasn't my thing. It wasn't really my jam. And then, so I just did it because of that. Right. And then I would say it's taken more of in the last 6 years since I was sick, looking more at my emotions and understanding through therapy of the connection that happens, why I operate in certain ways that I do. Why do Kate and I operate in our relationship dynamic in certain ways? Those are things I never even thought about before, right? So like I went to school for engineering, and the way I think is very systematic approach, linear. I'm a Virgo. So like organization, cleanliness, how things are ordered in a certain way is important to me. So once I started connecting the dots through therapy and just like working with Kate and myself, then it became like the emotional aspect. Now our business is a lot of central nervous system, work that happens inside of our money. And so that stuff started to develop over time, if that makes sense. So I just thought the harder that I would work, I would become more successful and the more learning was my approach previously. And then now tying the rest of this into it has developed over since I was sick.
And are you still driven by the same things and wanting to be on the cover of Forbes magazine and pushing yourself as hard as you can now? Or have things changed?
I'm not able to push myself as hard as I can anymore because I know I'll get sick. I also have 2 daughters. I have a wife. I have a new form of balance that exists. And I don't really, the term of balance gets, I think, work-life balance, all that stuff. Like, it's just energy, right? So I have a limited amount of energy that I have at 41, 42, coming up on 42. And then I did when I was 25, right? And I know there's like a lot of supplementation that can go in, and people are taking like hormones and all that stuff now for that. But at least at this point, I'm not doing that right now. But for me, there's a limited amount of energy that I can use on a daily basis. So I'm not able, and then if I am working or I am pushing or I am growing my business or working out, what's the real reason I'm doing it for? I think before it was more about the vanity metrics, the ego aspect is, the vanity, get the big car, the big house, all that stuff. Like that's where we're driving towards, because the materialistic items, more from that standpoint. And then of course the ego, it feels good to be recognized on FUB. I mean, imagine any of us have ever been recognized ever before for anything. It's like, cool, I get recognized. So I think that's still important and valuable. You're feeling seen, right, for that. And so if one day I end up on the cover of Forbes magazine, great, right? But do I really care about it at this point in time? No. And so it's because what am I actually doing this for right now is a more clarifying question for me. At one point, it was just to cover my basic living expenses. Because I've been to the store when I'm swiping a credit card check out and wondering if it's going to go through or bounce, like for many years. And I'm just like, okay, is this going to go through? Is this going to bounce? Is this going to work? Is this not going to work? Do I have the money? Looking at my bank account, can I cover that to cover this? And I don't have to do that now, right? That's not where my current life. It's like I can just go to the store and swipe and I know we're good to go, right? So that's covered and built over time. So from that standpoint, the ease has been created there. But what is the reason that we're doing this now? It's I really am inspired by a lot of the customer journey that's happening inside of our business. It's like every week I'm getting things where people are telling us their money stories and what's improving, and I'm like, this is dope, because everybody has a different experience that's happening here. And we all come from different backgrounds. We're all different people. We all have different lineages. We all have, different countries. And what that story is actually more gratifying to keep working. And in that process, it also helps me. Like I just had a customer service issue that happened 2 weeks ago. I learned a lot from that, to be like, okay, how can I approach it differently? How can I show up differently for these people? So I would say now it's shifted a little bit because now I moved to Miami after living in Maine. Maine is very conservative, I guess you could say. It's like New England it's like everybody has family money here, but they don't want to show it off, right? Is how it is. I don't mean politically conservative. I know if people are listening to the United States, I don't take what I'm saying as not a political conversation, right? And then I go to Miami where everything is completely outlandish. I have seen more I used to think Rolls Royce and Lamborghinis were unique and it was like awe-inspiring. It's like, oh, wow, look at those cars. I freaking see them every single day. It's like nothing to me now, right? I'm just like, all right, there's a $400,000, $500,000 car driving down the street. Still very impressive, from an engineering perspective and manufacturing and creation of a product is amazing. But just the mentality of striving for these things that I did at one point in time has gone away for sure. And so I think why I started or wanted to build a business has very much evolved over the last 12, 13 years.
And that's so interesting, something you said as well about the customer journey inside Relax Money. And, I'm part of this program. I have friends in this program amazing people that I can call good lifelong friends now. And some of the stories and the journeys we've been on is incredible. There's such a richness of people in there. And I think one thing I've massively learned in the program as well is I never really thought about money in the nervous system. I'm always talking about the nervous system, and money was like the last key that when I saw Kate talking about it, it just light bulb, something clicked. And I think it can be interesting to look at sort of money and energy as a similar thing, something that we have, they're tools, they need to be managed. And it was just interesting with what you said about your energy levels and, it can be finite. You need to prioritize what is a priority. One thing I hear a lot from the people I work with is there's almost a resentment, a frustration that they can't do everything. And from just hearing what you're talking about, you might have shifted from that to a different place now. Could you talk a little bit more about that, if that's resonating with you?
Nope, I'm still frustrated by it.
Okay, so the frustration's still there. Yeah. Then. Okay, tell me about that. It's still
there, but it's how I approach it now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as an example, like Kate and I just went away for 9 days, just the two of us. We went to Bermuda for a 40th birthday party for 4 days or so, or 3 days, and then we went to Colombia for our 10th wedding anniversary for 6 days. It took me 5 days out of those 9 days to completely disconnect from our business. For me to really relax around it and fall into that moment, it took 5 days, right? So it's also like, I have to, and what I learned kind of talking about this conversation we've been having, I was like, I have to, because if it takes, for example, I realized, let's say we're learning how to play the guitar. That first year, if you're consistently practicing at playing the guitar, sucks, right? It's just like, I sound like crap. I do this. It's like, I don't want to do it. You have resistance around to go to learning something new. But the more and more you play, it's going to get better and better and better. And for me, like disconnecting from our business was very challenging because it's been so long since I've actually done that. And I realized like I need to incorporate this every quarter from this point moving forward. Maybe it's 2 days, maybe it's 3 days, maybe it's 5 days. But if the more I do it, the easier it's going to be to disconnect from it. So there's times where all I want to do is work. Like I'm in that flow state. I want to be in there. But then I got these kids, I got the wife that's like asking me for things. Right. And it's just like, these kids are nonstop, right? It's just like they could care less what you got going on. And then it's just like they're 6 and 8, right? So they're young at this point. It's easier than it was when they were 6 months and 8 months, obviously. But I think from there, it's like the all we have in our life is energy. That's it. That's all we got. We got time and energy and money, if you want to think, in our health. But the reality of all of that is plays into our energetic patterns and what we exist in, right? So if we just think of it from, all right, where am I putting my energy today? Am I trying to work while my kids are asking me for things? Now I'm disconnected. Now I'm disorganized. If my kids walked in the middle of this interview and started asking me for things, now I lose focus on talking to Jenny, right? Now they're asking me for things. So it's like, where am I putting my attention? There's this illusion that we can multitask. Right. I was on the boat with friends this weekend, and this woman like stuck her arm out to stop the boat coming into the dock. And if her arm would have got stuck, she would have easily broke it. And I was like, just stop doing that. Don't do that. And she's like, oh, it's this, this, and this. And I was like, I've seen my wife like try, I've seen so many people try to be like having many conversations with many people because she was half distracted, half stopping the boat, half distracted. When your boat is pulling into the dock, you need to be focused on the dock in the boat, right? And it's like, oh, the multitask that us moms do. And I was like, it's all an illusion, right? It's just an illusion. And what you get better at as a parent is you get better at navigating between these worlds, right? Your kids are yelling at you, talking to Jenny, Penelope, I need space, and then it's like, go back. And now I go back. You get better at handling the chaos because you're learning just how to do it. Doesn't mean your energy is still disconnected from it. So for me, that has been the biggest piece of when it comes to the energy around it. I can't say it's improved. I still get anxious about stuff. I still want to work more than I do sometimes. I want to take more breaks because coming off this trip with my wife and taking 5 days to disconnect, getting back into work has been very hard. I don't want to do anything now that I really was like, oh, I know what this feels like. So I don't want to put myself back in the stress bubble of what I've operated in sometimes. So now it's learning how to balance in my life now. It's like, okay, work, focus on the work, and then disconnect from it. So that's currently what's happening. And we're in this right now, like why I'm talking to you, because I got back on, July 6th. So I'm 2 weeks into this new kind of pattern that I want to create because I don't want to go back to where I was. Because if I go back to where I was, that's when I get sick. That's when my skin flares up. That's when the lessons that I have to learn really show up in this way.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And so interesting. I think one thing that's coming to my mind, especially when you talk about like the disconnecting from work and then the getting back into work. I was talking to my partner about this yesterday because I've had a really, really busy week. And I said, I just need to go and sit in the garden. Like I've got loads to do, but I just need to go and sit. The sun's out finally. Just want to go and sit down. And it's almost like, like the spinning tops. Once you get that going, it has the momentum and it takes a while for it to slow down. And I think transitioning can be like that. And I think what you said as well about, especially as a parent, being able to switch in and out of what your kids need and coming back to work. I wonder about the work you've done with your nervous system. If the nervous system regulation piece is a bit like that, is how quickly can you switch in and out of states? You're dysregulated, you're regulated again. How long does it take to go in and out of those? So I'd love for you to share a little bit, if that's okay, talking about healing. Like what's helped you? I know you and Kate talk a lot about the nervous system. So what helps you?
I think we have to keep in mind too when we have this conversation about mental health or the nervous system, the way we're approaching it now, it's outside of our body. Like I had a conversation with a guy this week and he was asking about what is your biggest lesson, for you during this health journey? And I said, it's for me to get out of my head and into my heart. And he said, what about in your body? And I was like, no, I don't do, because my head is part of my body. Like my whole body is from my head to my toes, right? And even the energetic signals that are happening there. So the way we approach it is like separate, and I don't look at it as separate. So for me, I know it's very easy for me to stay in my head. I think about that all the time. I think about that. That's what I just said. I think about that being in my head, but just like being in my head, seeing the doing, and I'll call it being the doing is head work, because that is very easy for me. But being in the being of just being here would be like the heart work, we could say. I don't know if this makes any sense. I'm literally, this is what I'm coming up with as you asked me this question. So for me, it's the process is to constantly move back into my heart, even when I feel stressed out. So what are some practices that can happen during that? What's worked for me has been writing. And that's kind of been on and off for me, but I've been going to Joe Dispenza events, and that has really focused and intentionally forced me to get into my heart in his practices and what he leads through his meditation. And then I do those at home, right? Meditating has been very helpful. The stillness, just being still, is probably the fastest way for me to do that. And it's just stopping. When you're at a restaurant, and if I'm out to eat with Kate or friends, and instead of picking up your phone when that person goes to the bathroom, I just sit there and I just look around or stare straight ahead and don't even see what everybody else is doing. At my house, same thing. Just stop, breathe, get my breath under control, and then I can slow it down, speed it up, or however you want to do your breath practices. And I would say those are, of course, working out, but not working out for a purpose of like getting a six pack. It's just working out for movement for me. Is that if I know I'm on a higher stress level, if I haven't moved in a few days. Now, I move every day. I walk every day. I move my body. But an actual dedicated workout that's not being distracted by my phone. If I'm going to the gym to do a workout, I don't have headphones in. I'm not listening to anything. I'm allowing the gym music, whatever's there, to play. I don't have a podcast on. I put my workout is on my phone, so I know what the reps are or what I'm going through. I look at it to continue my workout. I stay off social media. I'm at the gym to work out. And I can get in and out in about 45 minutes to an hour, as long as I'm not distracted. And I feel a good pump after that. It feels really nice. And then I walk home. So and for me, my kryptonite is information consumption. I don't necessarily mean social media information, but it's podcasts, it's learning things, right? It's like listening to podcasts. It's learning what this is about. And that is my problem. That is my drug of choice, we could say. So that is, as I'm balancing my energy and feeling better, that the more those things are under, like I'm in control of instead of them in control of me, that's when I really operate at my highest level.
And that sounds like you're living an embodied life. Because one thing I see a lot, and I was this person and still have tendencies to do this, a bit like you, it's the thirst for knowledge. The mind can just constantly be fed. If I can keep feeding it, it will keep eating. It will keep wanting more. And we're in an age now of never-ending, absolute limitless information. And it can be pretty exhausting to be just feeding it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things I see with a lot of people that have got chronic illnesses or have been through trauma is we live up here, we live in our brains. And, you can call it the mind-body connection. As you said, the body is all one, it includes our head. But the felt embodied sense of being, we are switched off from, because we're up here a lot of the time, because often our felt senses, our body, whatever you want to call it, can often be too painful. We don't want to go there. Mm-hmm. So for you to speak to being able to go to the gym and be there, not be distracted, that speaks to a lot of where you've been and where you are now.
Well, thanks.
So another thing I'd love to ask you as well is it's rare to be talking to a man about this sort of stuff. There are so many women in the healing field. There are lots of women that have been through a lot of stuff, unfortunately, as are men. Can you just talk a little bit about men and healing and what's made you go on that journey? Why men don't sometimes? What's your experience of it?
Sure. I didn't know how.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say I don't help, like I have friends that actually help men, like are coaches for men, right? So that is not me at this point in time in my life. So, but I can share a lot of my journey and what I've witnessed.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't know how. I didn't know what to do, right? When Kate and I were on our road trip in 2011 and we were driving across the United States, and she said, if we ever have relationship problems, would you be open to seeing a therapist? That is something I never thought about before in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was 2011. I'm like, okay, I guess so. Like, I don't know. If I'm going to hire a marketing expert for my business, if I need help with myself, like, okay, that makes sense. And then we started seeing one in 2015 because we had our first kid. We were in the kitchen. We were fighting about a stuffed pepper that we were making for dinner. Which obviously we're not fighting about the stuffed pepper. You know, there's other things that we're fighting about. Mm-hmm. And so then we were just like, okay, well, can we go see someone that's there? And so then I learned how to heal, right? And I learned how to process my emotions and how to release my emotions and how to feel my emotions. This is all thing that has happened. And then I took men's courses that from taught by other men, teaching men how to do the same thing I just talked about. Because I didn't know how to. And if you look at this day and age that we currently operate in and don't think men need to heal, you're completely blind, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you just take the presidential race that's happening currently July of 2024 in the United States with Trump versus Biden, it's disastrous, right? It's like the extreme of men is a problem. And I can sit here and people are like, oh, Biden this. If you're on the Trump side, that's fine. If you're on the Biden side, that's fine. I can navigate in both of those worlds right now, people. Like, just, I can play both of those games. We can go back and forth all day. And it's not about that. It's not about the competition. It's about looking at these two older gentlemen and the way they interact in the world and realize, like, men need help. Mm-hmm. And it's from that standpoint, those are our quote unquote leaders that are leading this country. And it's a problem, right? It's a problem. And then, so that is what I would just say. If like, I don't need help, it's like, okay, yeah, I think we all could use support and help. And I think what we see is that men we don't know how to do it. Mm-hmm. Right. And so when I'm around a group, now I have a business that I've been running with Kate for a long time now. And our customer base is 90% people who identify as female. So I've had a lot of experience hanging out with women. I was mainly raised by my mom. Both of my parents are still married, but my dad traveled my whole life. So like I have been around women my entire life. And I've learned how to, from that experience of listening to them, what they don't like, what they actually want, you know, what do they really want in this? I used to consult for women business owners who are these, what I call them is the big energy women, these women that are running the show, that have like won at feminism, but then are unhappy, right? And so that's what we've conquered it all. I've run my business, I've made the money, I'm here, I got the kids, I got the family, but like I'm still not fulfilled in it, right? So I've interacted with women a lot, which has taught me a lot about with emotions, handling them, working with them, and how to process them. And so I've learned from that aspect of just being in that environment. Mm-hmm. For many, many years, even to this day, I'm more I could sit in a room of 50, 60 women and just myself and be way more comfortable than sitting in a room of 50 men, like still to this day. And so it is something I'm constantly learning. And then I went to this men's group called Sacred Sons. They are all over the world now, Australia, in Europe, do stuff in Mexico, definitely here in the United States. And one of the instructors was just like, men need to heal with men. Like you can't heal with women. And mm-hmm. that is something that I had to learn how to do. And I've been learning how to do that for a number of years. And I think that is the big piece of what men have had to go through. And like women can't teach men this stuff, right? We can learn from them, but it's not women's job to heal men. Many of them get into relationships, think they need to, but they don't need to. That's not their job. Right. Yeah. So, and so for me, I think that's been my experience. And I realized like the people in my life, like the men in my life, just taking my learnings from them and realizing like, it's not my job to fix them either.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not my job to heal them. I can be a guiding light to the direction and people can pay attention. But it's also like, I have 2 daughters. What do I want them to grow up to be? How do I want them? And I have a different approach to parenting than most people do. But it's just like from there, it's what do I want my wife to go through? Like Kate's father was way different than I am. You know, he's a straight up like New England man, and I am more abrupt and direct than that. And it's very confronting sometimes, right? And so that has been a big adjustment for her. And it's been a big adjustment for me to just tamp down on the big directness. Not everybody can handle it. Not everybody can heal it. And that's been my own self-reflective nature to just learn when to bring it up, when not to. Sometimes I make mistakes and it happens. But it's for me to just learning from there. So I think that's more of my experience with it. But I mean, men are leading in suicide by astronomical numbers. We are hurting more people than we've ever hurt before. And men are really hurting and we need support to do it. So I think if I can if there's one dude that listens to this, or if you're a woman that's in a partnership with a man or a man in partnership with a man and you have heard your partner talk about these things what we're talking about, just like, hey, this dude is talking about it, you know, and just start there, you know, and that's the place to start. And it's confronting to look at your stuff. Right? It's confronting to look at your insecurities, your vulnerabilities, to work through them. And then we fall like we're not being man enough, quote unquote, right? Great book. Justin Baldoni wrote a book called Man Enough. I mean, there is a lot of men talking about these things. It's not that sexy as making money and driving a Lambo. You know, it's not that sexy as getting a giant house on the ocean. But the missing point is if you work on your stuff, all of that stuff is going to show up faster and better than you ever thought before, right? Because we are breaking through these insecurities and vulnerabilities that we have.
And I bet life is a lot more fulfilling when you're not running to, I'll be happy when I have the Lambo, I'll be happy when I have the house, you know, that I'll be happy when syndrome, which doesn't
because
work.
most people that have all the money are miserable, right? Like people are miserable no matter what. But like when you get more money, if you're not, that's saying that it always exposes your true character. Like if you win, like, or get all this money. But the reality is when you have more money, there's more things that happen. Maybe it's a staff or you're hiring people. Like there's more headaches that come with it in a certain degree if you choose to live your life that way. And that is also another energetic shift that takes place. Right? You have to also, you're up leveling your energy in a certain way because now you go from the doer who's making the money to now you're going to manage your money. And that could be from an investment standpoint, but that could be like if I hire a house cleaner, if I have 4 cars instead of 1, now your energy is so disconnected from everything that like, where do I put it? What do I do with it? Now I got to hire somebody to manage it all, but now I got to deal with that person as an employee. Right? So there's all this other stuff that ties into it. So as you're up leveling yourself, you also have to like, you're learning how to navigate your energetic boundaries and limits that are there. So, and I feel that when I always look at it as parenting, becoming a father is a way to kind of sum this up. That's very challenging for guys. And it's the woman, the mom is doing all the work, right? During pregnancy. It's like they have the baby, they're growing the baby, they're adjusting to that baby for 9 to 10 months, right? Like the baby's growing inside of them. A dad is in the hospital and it's like, here's your child, right? Like overnight. And now I'm supposed to, like, what is happening? So I don't like, and you can't really prepare for that. It's not a preparation that's like, okay, I'm going to pretend I have a child for 9 to 10 months before the baby's born as a man. Right. And so I think it's but we can prepare emotionally in that way, or really as we work on ourselves. So when that time comes to caretake, like, who's going to support my wife? Who's going to support myself during this? It's such an abrupt change to become a dad. And I think that's where a lot of stuff starts to spiral for men, because now they're responsible for, or feel like they're responsible for, this child, the mom, another kid, right? Relationships start to break apart after their first kid. Divorces happen more, so that's what I would say. That's a very long answer to your question about men. So, but that's my take from what I've seen.
Thank you. And that's really, really good to hear. And I just want to share something around the word vulnerability as well, that I think so many people, I just want to clearly say this, so many people hear the word vulnerability and confuse it for weakness. And it really isn't. One of the biggest
100%.
things, one of the strongest things you can do is go into a space and be vulnerable.
Right. But when you think about, so with guys, a lot of times we were called pussies. You're being a girl. Our dads would beat us, in that way. You're told to toughen up, man up. Like, the terms that we use for it. What is our strength as a boy? Is a soldier going to the army, professional athlete. A professional athlete gets made fun of. They want to take a week off to be with their kid after the newborn's born, like baseball player, they get suspended, right? So like all of these things that happen as a boy that we're inheriting is why vulnerability leads to weakness, right? Because when we were vulnerable as a boy, it gets beaten out of ourselves. Yeah. And for the boys that were maybe more vulnerable, were probably, the tendency to be made fun of, right? And so what that is becomes a problem. And so as men, and then it gets worse as you get older, right? So if that's beaten out of you at 9, now you just start to shut everything down. And then when are you born, right? The birth order of a family. Are you the first child? Are you the second child? Are you the third child? First child is given more direct responsibilities, told to toughen, it's like get in order earlier. Third child could be more of the mom's favorite kid type vibe, right? And then everything's more catered to them because the third child, your parents are exhausted by the first two, right? So I think where the birth order happens also plays into all of this. And yeah, but it's Kate and I just went through this in Bermuda. Like all the stuff I'm talking about is continually learning experience. We had an experience that I was mad at her, but I wasn't really mad at her. I was mad at myself. And then I didn't take responsibility for my own actions, what I wanted to do, because I didn't listen to myself when I wanted to make it. And then I started blaming her, and the next day we talked it out, and she was like, I apologized. And and I said, at this point in time, for all the work that we've done together, been together since 2011, and so 13 years, that if we're mad at each other, 90 to 95% of it, we're actually mad at ourselves and taking it out on the other person at this point, right? There might be a 10 to 5% variability that's in there that person actually did something that I feel harmed by or upset with or something, right? But 90 to 90% of it is because I am upset at myself and taking it out on Kate at this point in stage of our relationship. So yeah, I think it's just learning all of that's happening there. But with like you said, it's the vulnerability in our bodies and as we're taught in society equals weakness. And we have to be tough. We have to show that the toughness is. The Western cowboy in the United States, John Wayne, is tough, but RuPaul is weak as like RuPaul is, we're going to make fun of RuPaul. Right. And because of how RuPaul expresses themselves. And
I would say that they're probably stronger for going out and being like, this is my authentic self and there's no one else doing this and I'm going to be me. And face the ridicule.
Could be. I mean, I don't know. I haven't had a conversation with John Wayne or RuPaul. But, if you think about RuPaul is just living their true self and not hiding behind it. And so, yeah. But yeah, you could probably say that.
Yeah. And something you said earlier about this can be often a trait that men come up with more, but I think this can apply to everyone, to be honest. I don't need help. And I think finally, I'd love to hear you just speak a little bit about how to support and how to ask for support. So when you were in probably the midst of your illness, maybe broken leg, weren't able to do much. How was it to accept support, ask for support, and also offer support when someone else is not well?
Yeah, my Kate kicked me out of the house. So when I was really, really sick at my worst, she said, you have to go stay at my mom's. And her mother wasn't there. She was actually gone for like a week. So I was there by myself. I was unable to do anything. And Kate was at home with 2 young kids. And she's like, I can't take care of you too. You got to go. And I was like, okay, where do I got to go? And I had to start texting my friends to be like, can you bring me food? That was so, like, you talk about vulnerability and weakness. That's what feels like weak, to ask for support and ask for help. Right. And from there, I just left a house right now of our friends we were staying with. His mother just passed away. And when you have a house, it requires a lot of upkeep. And you can either choose to do the upkeep by yourself, or you can hire somebody to help you. So it's like, when do you ask for support, and then when do you do the things by yourself? And this is a learning process that takes place. In terms of me, I am very good at the doing, like we talked about already. So my biggest strength is learning to ask for support and help right now. Like, it is to get me out of the doing. And this includes our company. This includes my family and my life. This includes when we decide to buy a new house. Just all of the things I'm doing in my life. What is it that I actually have to be doing? And then what can I actually get support on? And asking for assistance also equals weakness, because I should be able to do all of this by myself. And that is not always the case. So for that, it's where is it that I need to ask for more support in my house, which is why we have breakdowns. And this is something that I learned when I was really, really sick, because I was laying on the floor and realized, like, I have to ask for more support. And a lot of times, because Kate and I talk so much all the time, because we were running a company together, we have kids together, what I told her is that when I bring something to you where I need to get support outside of you, or I can't figure it out myself, or you don't want to be my therapist, that quote unquote at that moment, we have an agreement between the two of us that says, like, who can you talk to about this besides me? Mm-hmm. Because at that moment, I shouldn't be the one that's helping her, and she shouldn't be the one that's helping me. So mm-hmm. It's training me to get support outside of that. So I have Kate and I have a couples therapist. She has her own individual therapist. Our couples therapist is also my individual therapist. So, and this isn't something I haven't talked to David in like 6 months, right? Since March, actually. I talked to him in March. That's once. And then we had like a couples session. So it's not an every week occurrence for us. It's like when we need a reboot. And so that has been an ongoing learning experience that I've really become much better at in the last 6 years. Mm-hmm. Just learning that, like, I'm not able to do all this by myself, because it all is energy again, right? Mm-hmm. Where am I going to spend my energy? Am I going to hang out with my kids, or do I want to paint the side of my house, as an example? Right? Mm-hmm. Like, no, I don't want to paint the side of my house. Exactly. Well, I could paint the side of my house with my kids, right? So it's like, okay, then we can do it together. I don't enjoy painting the side of my house. So if I can pay somebody $3,000 or whatever to paint the side of my house, and then it's done in one day, then it's done. And like, I can move on with my life. So it's all about where that energy, that's an example of painting, right? Just pick and choose. Maybe it's your laundry. Maybe it's cleaning your toilet. Maybe it's this. And so for me, I've had to learn that. At one point, I did everything myself. I used to clean my house and do the construction and do all of that, because that's currently, I couldn't afford anything else right there. Mm-hmm. But I think for asking for help for women inside of business owners, and number one is hiring. The most important hire you can do in your company is this is for men and women, is who's helping out at home. Because all the household stuff takes energy from the business stuff. So the first hire should be somebody that is helping you at your house. This includes cleaning, picking up, doing your laundry, like all of those basic necessities that requires us to live could be done by somebody else. And then I recommend like hiring inside of the business, right? It's like, who needs to come next? So it takes care of that, because I work with a lot of moms, and it's exhausting. Childcare and then cooking and cleaning and picking up and all of the stuff. And then they're like, I need to hire a marketing agency to help me on Instagram. It's like, no, you don't. If you got somebody to do all the other stuff right now, you could be doing Instagram and then work as your business grows to bring those people on. That's there. Because I would rather hire a full-time person to be with me at my house than the outside person. So it comes back to the energy piece again.
And that's so interesting with it. So much of this is about what you value and where you spend your energy, because it's such a myth that we get told all the time that you can do it all. No one can do it all. We have to pick and choose, like, what's important to us. Where do we spend our money? Where do we spend our time? Like, what are we filling our lives with? Because what we fill our lives with is ultimately what we are valuing and what we find important.
That's correct.
So I love the piece about getting
you can
the
do it
help
all
at
thing
home.
is such an illusion. Sorry to cut you off, but it's such an illusion, right?
Yeah.
Like who's the best surfer in the world? Kelly Slater. Kelly Slater also isn't the best snowboarder in the world or the best, croquet player in the world, right? Warren Buffett is the best investor, they say, in the world, but he's also not the best marathon runner. Right? Like, so there's this illusion that exists that we can do everything, and it's impossible. So it's like, what is it that we really like to do and enjoy to do and love to do? And just do that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, let go of everything else.
Yep. Otherwise we just burn ourselves out. We're just in a never-ending cycle of trying to do the things, and you're just constantly setting yourself up for failure. It just won't work trying to do all the things.
And you can watch, I think one of my most fascinating things I enjoy watching now are these sport documentaries. Like these documentaries that follow the athletes around. So they have one on golf. They have one on tennis now. They're all over the place, right? You can see it whatever you want. F1 kind of started this whole thing, and then it kind of, and these other. I really watch them for the behavior of the athlete. That is what I find the most fascinating, watching it for how the athlete behaves. Because who's the best in the world at tennis? Like Roger Federer, Nadal, Pete Sampras, like these guys that have been Djokovic. I don't know. Yeah, Djokovic. Like these guys, when you watch them, and then you get in the women, Serena Williams, Venus Williams, how do these women behave? How do they show up? Same with the men. Like you got guys that are just like throwing their emotions all over the place. And so men with emotions, right? We talk about that. Anger, frustration. That is acceptable. Like Donald Trump and Joe Biden yelling at each other at a debate, acceptable. If both men started crying because whatever reason, unacceptable, right? They're being emotional. So it's how we phrase and use these terms. And so like with you watch these professional athletes, there's a reason that the top tennis players in the world, like the ranking, you could be in the top 20 of the professional athletes, tennis players from 1 to 20, right? Those are the top 20 people in the world. There's a distinct difference between 1, 2, and 3. They're emotionally centered. They have their stuff under control. The way they handle themselves on and off the court is going to be distinctly different than 17, 18, and 19, and 20. And you can see it in these documentaries. You can see where this person's never going to win a tournament. You can see that what's going to happen. And I started to really realize this during CrossFit as I was watching a lot of CrossFit documentaries. There's a woman by the name of Tia Claire Toomey. She got second or third place. And a camera came up to her. This was 6 or 7 years ago. And they were asking her about how she felt, because I think she was in first, and then during the weekend of the competition, dropped down into second or third. And she's like, get away from me. I don't want to talk about it. She pushes the camera away. And I was like, she's never going to win, based off that reaction that happened there. What happened was, this is my gut. I don't know if this is true, but this is what I think happened, is she watched that documentary, watched herself, and was like, never again. And she's gone on to win the CrossFit Games like 5 or 6 years in a row. I think 5-time champ. And her entire mentality and persona changed. She doesn't have an emotional breakdown. She doesn't lose herself on the field, on the play of field. She keeps things together on camera and off camera. It's like at least that's what's portrayed into the public. And I was like, this woman has her emotions dialed in and is here to compete and here to win. And so from there, I think that is where it's like, okay, that's what I want to be. I want to be the best in my field. I want to be the best in the game. So how do I become better at doing that?
And that's interesting. I mean, I'm not really a sports person, but I'm curious to watch some of these documentaries. When you say she's got her emotions dialed in, do you think, and especially from a female perspective, do you think she's managing them in a healthy way, or do you think she's just not showing them and learned how to suppress them?
I don't know. That's not really, like, I don't know her personally, so I can't comment like how,
Yeah.
but I think from perception is the tennis documentaries are the most fascinating because they always scream and yell and they get frustrated and they rail their rackets in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I guess what I refer to as a healthy way is that you're going to feel this. I feel it in myself, right? When I'm really frustrated and mad, does it make sense for me to go punch a hole in the wall? No.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Can I be frustrated and mad and process that? Where am I going to take that energy? Because it's energy. What am I going to do with it? How am I going to bottle it up or not? My gut is that she's not bottling it up. She's just focusing the energy in the right direction of where it needs to go. Now,
Amazing.
I'd have to hear her in an interview and her here talk about it. But I think that is where it's like, okay, what am I going to do to re-ground myself? Because when these tennis players go bash the racket against the ground, they think that they are taking their energy and it's going to refocus them, right? It's like I'm taking my frustration on this thing, this object, and like now, but it doesn't solve what's going on inside your body, right? It doesn't fix that problem. So It's like, how do you have a balance of, for me, when I notice I get frustrated, I'll just speak to myself about it because I don't really know Tia Claire Toomey, so I don't know how she deals with it. But if I realize like I'm frustrated or upset with somebody, how do I rebalance that and learn from it to move forward? So then I'm getting my stuff under control. And now, of course, you could always have outbursts. Of course, things could always happen. And it doesn't mean like you can't cry either, right? Now it's crying at winning a competition is a form of enjoyment, right? It's a form of joy. You're like releasing the hard work that you've put in. And then you like show emotion there. I don't think showing emotion is incorrect or wrong, but it's like, it's the extremes that we are taking it.
When's it appropriate?
Really, like throwing it all off. And you can't try to control it all. But I'm not an expert in this field, but it's just like the way I look at it now for myself. Because like, is screaming at my children when they won't get ready for school going to fix my problem? No. My kid is 6 years old. She just wants to lay on the ground and laugh at us of how ridiculous we are. Right? And really, I'm annoyed because they won't follow through what I can do. Now, can I learn from that and maybe figure out a game to play with them where it tricks them into getting dressed, but now it's fun. Right? And so for me, it's like, how do I have more fun in what I'm doing? I don't know if trick's the right word, but it's basically like it's meeting my child where my child's at instead of trying to get my child to meet me where I'm at. Because I'm 41, they're 6. They're not going to meet me at where I'm at.
Yeah. And play is so important. Play is so nourishing and something we still need as adults, believe it or not. So it can be fun for you as well. It's interesting with you saying that about the emotional stuff as well, because it's just reminded me, last night I went to a ADHD networking group. First time I've been to one, and I thought it would be the majority women. And I turned up and I was actually the only woman there. And I got talking to all of these men. There was one other woman. And to just be in the environment of them coming to what they said feels like a safe space, to be open with their emotions and talking about anger and how they express it, and that they're open to learning and healing. And it was just such a wonderful environment to actually hear.
That's amazing.
So for them and for you, like, I just want to say, for all the men out there that are listening to this, doing the work, just thank you, because it is huge and it has ripple effects. You'll be affecting your family, your kids, your friends. Sure. It rolls out. So, and interestingly, one of the men I met last night, we were in the car park trying to get a ticket for the parking machine, and he said, oh, if you wait till 6 o'clock, it's like £4 cheaper. So we were there at like 3 minutes to 6 just waiting. So I immediately just went, oh, he feels like a safe man. And then funnily enough, because I was meeting a group of strangers, he was in the group. And it's just interesting how there are certain men that I'm like, I feel safe with you. And then there are certain people, often men that you're around, and I'm like, I don't feel safe. I need to protect myself, and walls are up. And it was just an interesting experience.
I think for men, if they think we don't have a problem, is to ask the women in their life, do they feel safe around men? It's as simple as that. And I can't make up numbers, but I bet you 90 to 95% of women are going to say, most of the time I don't feel safe around men. Or had a bad experience around guys. Yeah. And for a variety of reasons this exists, this is why we have to heal the situation. Just like walking down the street, being in an environment. What's this going to be? Yeah.
Last night I was walking back to my car and I was down, it was a dark, quiet street. My car's at the end of it. Just before my car, there's a big white van with one of the doors open and two men stood talking in the road. And I'm immediately like, on guard. Don't walk too close to that van. Make sure the car's open. Get in and go. And it's just like, do men have to deal with that? Are they always on alert for things like that? Yeah. Yeah. So
I think sometimes, depending on where you're at, like we were just in Colombia and it's a brand new place that I've never been before. And, I'm just on a more alert, just to being in a new place, from there. But it's not like what women are constantly thinking about.
Yeah. Yeah. I could talk about this for days anyway. I've got one final question that I would love to ask you. And I'd love to hear if you could look back to when you were in the midst of your illness, or offer some advice to someone who is in the middle of feeling awful, they're stuck in a chronic illness. What advice would you give yourself or them?
If you're using substances, stop. So what I mean by that is, like, if you're drinking a bunch of alcohol or any at that point, if you're sick and not feeling good, or I know marijuana is becoming a much more legal thing in the United States or where it is, but I just would say stop. Because everything that we do, the way I look at life now is like, what is my long-term effect? If I live to 100, what I'm doing now, how will it affect me when I'm 100 years old? Now, I might never make it to 100, who knows? But it's like, that's the approach I take at it. And when we are utilizing substances to check out and to feel better, we are blocking to feel. And you're just delaying it. So I stopped drinking over basically 12 years ago now. And it has been a roller coaster ride of learning who I am in this process. And it's definitely paid off. Some days great, some days suck. And I think when it comes to being in our illness or our disease that we might be in or not feeling good, it is getting support. It's being around other humans. Maybe it's just going to a park and sitting there and watching people. Being alone in our house can be very depressing. And I just would say also, there was a time where I wasn't able to move or do physical activity. But I do know that this stuff helps. So just getting to a gym, lifting weights, lifting heavy things really can change our state very quickly. And that might feel intimidating. There is millions of online programs to just download onto your phone to just go and lift heavy things. So, and I really think about, like, do you have enough support in your system, in your life? Do you have enough people to talk to? At least somebody that'll just be there as a friend, just listening to you vent, right? You're going through something that's really hard. Like my buddy's mother who just died, I said, listen, I am a phone call away. If you ever need anything, you just pick it up. I will answer the phone. And if I can't answer it right away, I will get back to you. I am a person who talks on the phone and answers text messages. And like, some people are struggling. And I always want somebody answered the phone for me when I was struggling. And I always want to be there for somebody else to do that. And you got to have somebody like that in your life. And whether you find that inside of a Relaxed Money Facebook group or circle community, like Jenny talked about finding friends, inside of some sort of program that you have. We've had people inside of our programs get married. Like, it's so crazy. Wow. That people are finding connections inside of online communities. And then they like extending their life together, becoming friends, meeting locally, finding their state, the country that they live in, and finding a group of like-minded people. And they're out there. And for me, that was the biggest thing as a guy, to ask for help from support from my people in my life was a huge vulnerability for me to be able to do it. But by far, it's been the best thing that I've been able to do, because I grew up in a house where it was just your way or the highway. You know, it's like that's the mentality that I took, that everything was my way or my dad's way or the highway. And so from there, that is not a good learning experience. That's not a good faith to trust other people. And I've had to learn how to trust. I've had to learn how to ask for help is my support. So if you're like really down and out, I mean, that's what's really helped for me. And I hope that helps as well. Yeah, and as a guy looking for support, looking for community, there's a lot of other men in the same place. And if you got to start somewhere, I think a men's community is a great place. It could be local. It could be something that's like Sacred Sons, and you just go to sacredsons.com. You can find events. But there's a lot of other things that do that. And also, what's a safe space for you? There is some men's communities are very Christian-based and religious-based, right? Everything's about Jesus. Might not be your vibe. Not my vibe. So, and that's fine. You know, but at least find a group of where it is. Some of them are very militaristic approach in the men's space, where it's like you wake up at the same time with everybody, you do these 75 things before you get going, and another 75 in the afternoon or whatever it may be. And it's just like, I've heard all of these different ideas, and like, I don't want to work harder. Like, that is not, I don't need to work harder. That's not my thing. Some guys need to work harder, right? That is not my jam. And so like, I wanted to be more loving and inclusive and open to all people, and to join an organization like that, you know, and that's where I really found that within Sacred Sons. And when I first I've only been to one event and hired one of the trainers, and I listened to their podcast and watch their videos and stuff. So it makes it sound like I go to all the time, but I don't. And so for me, it's like, where is it? But I also did John Weiland's stuff, you know, Wineland. And that was really good and helpful for Kate and I as a couple and individuals. So the support is out there. It's just waiting for us to show up for it. Right. And I think the sooner we can get that, the better our life is going to be for there.
Yeah. And I think you just got to find your thing. You've got to find your safe space, what feels good for you. And I would also add to the comment you made about substances as well. Through the work that I do, those substances give you something. They're not the healthiest outlet, but they're doing something for you. And then it's if it's alcohol, let's say, and it relaxes you, okay, well, you're in need of relaxing. Where else can you get that? Something might be numbing
shopping
you.
Or, you know, movies and YouTube, like my problem, and information consumption, like all of that stuff. It's just, it's all getting me something, but it all distracts us from who we are. And so the sooner we can slow down in that world, because you can be intoxicated on day-to-day activities. We have access to more information. It can overtake our systems. And the next thing you know, we're like, oh, the day's over. Now I go to bed. Now I'm exhausted. And it's like, how do we just disconnect from all of that? And I don't buy, when it comes to substances, et cetera, like we have manufactured that alcohol is good. There's nothing positive about it. It's the same thing we put in my car here in the United States to drive. It's ethanol, same product, put in our bodies, put in our car. And I don't know. I just like it. I had a good run for a really long time and like lived my life. And I think for a lot of people, that could be the first thing that stops, because that has been the legal item, right? And then with pharma, et cetera, pharma's are the same type of thing. I mean, that's what I ended up getting really sick from pharmaceuticals, a drug that was prescribed to me by a doctor. And I'm not saying to go do it or stay away from it forever, but I think it's a way to look at the whole holistic picture of your life. And it's like, is this what I want to be doing? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, thank you for answering everything you have and sharing all the wisdom. And again, thank you for the work that you have done and coming on here. So yeah, thank you so much, and really appreciate you coming on.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Good question. Question asker.
Good.
Good interviewer.
Great.
I should say. Yeah.
Thank you. But yeah, appreciate you coming on. Thanks. Thank you for listening to this episode of Calm Your Nervous System. I hope you found the conversation as interesting as I did. If you would like to start healing your nervous system, I have a free energy diary available just for podcast listeners, which will really help you see your blind spots about how you're spending your time and your energy. Find it at jennyadamscoach.co.uk/podcast. Find out more about me and somatic coaching in the show notes below. See you next time.